All right. Well, as I said there in the prayer, we are going to finish up with the book of Ruth tonight. And we've been going at it for several weeks now since the first of the year. I had some breaks because of this unprecedented snow we've had. But I hope up to this point that you have really taken away a lot of good practical things to apply to your life from the book of Ruth. And last week, we spent time looking at the law of love and really understanding what was happening here with Ruth and Naomi and Boaz. And there were a lot of kind of comical things we were looking at, that how the process went last week with Ruth's proposal to Boaz for him to be her guardian redeemer or kinsman redeemer. She goes to the threshing floor at night, lays at his feet, covers her up, all the things we read in chapter 3 last week. And we went through why that was, because of that levirate marriage laws that were in the book of Deuteronomy. And so everything we've studied up to this point, from them going to Moab in the beginning because of the famine, returning back after Elimelech and the two sons had died, and the gleaning in the fields and being in Boaz's fields, and the grace that God had bestowed upon Ruth, to what we looked at in chapter 3. All of this has been happening to bring us to what we're about to study in chapter 4. And I want you to broaden your perspective a little bit. So as you sit back and you're looking at chapter 4, I want you to broaden out. I don't want you just to look at how this is going to fit in to just the book of Ruth. I don't want you just to fit it into how it fits into the historical time period of the Bible. I want you to look about all of human history and see if you can see some parallels as we read through this chapter, and just pay attention to how every little thing goes. And I think you'll find some deep truths here. So we're going to look at chapter 4, and we're going to talk about redemption, because where we left off last week, because Boaz got up the next morning. Ruth left the threshing floor before people could recognize anybody. It was dark. They went back to town. And Boaz, what was he going to do? He was going to find this other closer relative that was more closely related to Naomi and her family, to see about him being the kinsman redeemer. And so that's where we're going to pick up in chapter 4. So we're going to read verses 1 through 4. It says, "Meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate and sat down there, just as the guardian redeemer he had mentioned came along. Boaz said, 'Come over here, my friend, and sit down.' So he went over and sat down. Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, 'Sit here,' and they did so. Then he said to the guardian redeemer, 'Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here and in the presence of the elders of my people. If you will redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. For no one has the right to do it except you, and I am next in line.' 'I will redeem it,' he said." All right. So I want to stop here. You read throughout this whole thing. We're going to stop at verse 4. Because Boaz, again, as I said, he's returned from the fields. They would not have been in the city itself. You're out in the fields where the threshing floor was. So he's come back into town, and he goes to the town gate. He goes to the city gate. And having been to Israel in 2023, I was in the ruins in Tel Dan of this ancient town. And you had at the city gate, I was picturing this when I was reading through this the other day, because that is just where everything was happening at the city gate. It's where your elders would meet. It's where the court was assembled there. The elders would meet and decide different things at the gate of the city. And we have no context of this kind of stuff because we don't have gates on our towns. But every town, every place would have walls and a gate for protection, and all of that. And so that entrance point was a lot of hustle and bustle that went on there. And So I've given you some references in your Bible to show you in Deuteronomy, 2 Samuel, and Job about the importance of the city gate and why he went there. But we see that he goes to the city gate because he knows that if people are going to enter into town, they're going to come through there, right? They're going to leave. They're going to go through there. But he needed to be where the elders and all were. But he goes there. I'm not exactly sure that he was meaning that he was going to meet this relative right off. But if you look at what it says that he sat down there, what? Just as the guardian redeemer, just as the man had come by, the guardian redeemer he had mentioned was coming by. Don't you think God had a little something to do with that? That was putting this all together. Can you go to the next part of that, Joe? Thank you. Where the guardian redeemer that he had mentioned came along. So Boaz probably was a little shocked about this, that it's happened so quickly, because it's my estimation that Boaz probably was going to the city gate to get the council together, saying, hey, are y'all going to be ready? I'm fixing to try to go find this guy, and we need to get court together because we need a transaction that's going to be made. It's probably what he was looking to do. He may have was going to hang around there a minute. He may have been to the house. I don't know, since he wasn't there. Not exactly sure. But Boaz is taking pretty much control here. He says, hey, come over here, my friend, and sit down. And what's it say? Boaz, must have been a formidable fella. He said, yes, sir. He come in and sat down. Then Boaz gave some more orders. Didn't he? In verse 2, Boaz took 10 of the elders of the town and said, sit here. And what happened? And they said, I pay attention to this stuff, okay? I mean, this guy over here, he told him to do it, and it says, every word in the Bible matters to me, okay? It didn't have to say, and they sat down, and they sat down. I think, what it gets me? I think Boaz was pretty excited right now, all right? I just get it. You know how he responded to Ruth last chapter. He's here. He's like Earl trying to get a project done. He wants to get this done now. Okay? Not yesterday, not 2 weeks ago, everything. He's ready. So he's over here and he's barking them orders, Earl. I'm telling you, hey, how are you? Come over here and sit down. But I caught you, right? That's great. Here. Hey, you over here. Hey, quit your talking. Come over here. Stir the soup. Come over here and sit down. We got court. We got to make right now. And that's why I think these people were responding to him. They're like, what's going on with Boaz today? What's going on with Boaz? And they sat down and they did whatever he was saying. That's my interpretation. When we get to heaven, we'll ask him exactly how it happened. We'll look at a movie of it. All right, but right now you got to deal with me.
You must have had an absolutely commanding attitude.
Yeah, I just...
what's the chances these 10 men over here are all going to say, yeah, I'll go sit down?
Well, he was a prominent fella, so he was asking them to do it. But like I said, I think Boaz, you can see he's moving at warp speed. He's got a plan in his mind, and they do it. So they're all sitting down. They're here together. The 10 elders are there. So court has been convened. The gavel has hit the desk, and so now he starts presenting this proposal to, what's this guy's name? This other fellow, you know his name? Didn't say. I don't know his name. This unnamed guardian redeemer. He tells him. He says, "Look, Naomi." Now, who asked him to to marry him? Basically, who laid down at his feet? Ruth. Okay. He says, Naomi, who has come back from Moab, is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. And the guy's going, yeah, okay. Come, move on. And he says, I thought I should bring the matter to your attention and suggest that you buy it in the presence of these seated here in the presence of the elders of my people. If you redeem it, do so. But if you will not, tell me, so I will know. Now, the last part of this verse here is the main deal. He says, for no one has the right to do it except you. Remember, this is the only guy who's standing between him and Ruth. Okay? It would have been his family member. I don't think it was actually his brother. He calls him a brother in some translations, but it's not his brother. He was more closely related, so he could have been a closer, somehow a closer cousin, twice removed, all that kind of stuff. Second cousin. We don't exactly know. I am pretty sure, as we have looked at the genealogy, that we think it's not his actual brother. Yeah. I mean, Elimelech could have been an uncle, and this could have been a nephew, kind of circumstances and all the rest of that. It was extended, because Boaz is, I said Elimelech, Boaz is more of an extended family member too. They didn't have any other brothers like the two guys. So you went down the line. But we'll ask him when we get there to be sure. But as far as we know right now, I do not think it was his actual brother. So he goes to him, and this guy is standing. But what you were saying before, it was always the brother-in-law. But if they didn't have a brother-in-law, you kept going down to the next of kin. But so he goes to him. He's the one standing there. So Boaz is negotiating a deal that he's pretty biased about, right? I mean, he wants the answer to be no. I'm not going to be the redeemer. That's what he's after. Okay, keep that in mind. That's what he's after. But he brings up this thing here about Naomi, and you can look a whole lot into this. It's something that I spent a tremendous amount of time digging into, because technically, when Elimelech died, his two sons, and we'll see this later in these verses, the land that he had would have been given and split amongst his sons that were still living. It was a decade later, his sons died. So the land, technically, no woman had a right to the land. It really is not technically true that Naomi could have sold this land. Yeah. This is why Boaz is negotiating the deal for her. She could not have done it. What he's saying is not that she owns the deed to the land. Now, they could have done that if they broke the law, and they were lawbreakers back then. So she could have, under a law-breaking situation, been given land that a woman shouldn't have been given. But I don't think that's exactly what happened. She has a piece of land that still has not been disposed of. Okay, so Boaz is standing in the middle. They probably had talked and discussed this, but the situation was that Mahlon, which was the son that was Ruth's husband, would have had possession of this land, and did have possession of this land, as we'll look at it later, but he had no heir. So it was still stuck back in limbo. So that's why it's reverting back to kind of Naomi. But Naomi needed a redeemer, but Ruth needed a redeemer too. So you have this, it's not really, like I said, that she owns it or Ruth owns it. But I think also Naomi was the one everybody was very familiar with. So she was the one that was from this town, had been there before. Everybody knew her. Ruth is a foreign person. So he's also name dropping, with the most senior member of the family when it comes to this land there. Remember, he's not bringing up this Ruth girl yet about any of that. He's just talking about the land. So I think he's purposefully leaving out the Ruth. He could have very well said Ruth's trying to sell this land. I think that would have been a possible scenario. But again, I think he's trying to take this thing somewhere. So anyway, he tells him about the land. The guy says, I think this sounds good. Yeah, I'll do it. What are your thoughts on how Boaz proposed this deal? We're only talking about the land right now.
You could almost say a little conniving or dishonesty involved.
You could say that.
I think he was actually, I don't think he was conniving. I think he was following the letter of the law just as it was supposed to.
What letter?
Even though he was trying to manipulate the situation, he was still following the letter of the law.
Well, I know what you're saying. He was following the letter of the law, but that's not the question that I asked. What I asked was, what are your thoughts on how he proposed the deal? I use words carefully. He absolutely told Ruth, hey, I can't say yes. I've got to go find this guy because there's somebody who's closer. He's following the law. But how he proposes this.
My question was, Naomi selling the land, or did he just say this?
I don't think he would have lied. I don't think he lied. I'm not going to say, he's not, I'll tell you my view since y'all been so silent on this. He was doing this in a way that, hey, he did not give the man more information than he needed at the time. If you're going to make a good deal, that you always have to hold a few cards in your pocket. Okay? You don't put all your cards on the table, if you're going to make a good deal. I think Boaz was a little bit now trying to orchestrate this. You may see, and I could be wrong on this, but I feel this way. You may see that Boaz is trying to, somehow when we get into these things, we try to orchestrate it ourselves. We're not fully relying on God to work out everything. We say, well, we better do it this way and that way. May have been a little bit of kind of like politics in there where they said, well, we're going to structure this out and lead them to this place. Nothing about it was wrong. He didn't lie about anything, but I think he was using Naomi there, not hitting him with Ruth, because he knew where he wanted to be able to take this. God could have told him to do it this way. I don't read that, but I think it could be said that you had a little humanity here, because I think this man's like, look, this guy's in between me and my woman, and I'm going to orchestrate this. I'm not going to tell him right off the bat, about this. He wanted to get the land part taken care of first, because that's one section of the deal. And then the levirate marriage was different. Those are two separate laws that they're dealing with. So he just brought up one case. He's in court. He brought up one case, and then he was going to bring up the other case. All right.
Major question.
Okay.
How did he know Naomi was going to sell the land?
Because it's my view and the view of some commentators that they would have discussed this prior to going.
Leave the threshing floor and go straight to Jerusalem?
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that. It says, meanwhile, Boaz went up to the town gate. Surely he went home, took him a shower, shaved, and all that before he went to court.
Did he come in contact with Naomi?
I think he would have. I think before he went here, it's very possible that he had stopped by to talk to Naomi. Listen, I'm in total agreement with the commentators about this, because Naomi has a great plan. Remember, she was planning all this with Ruth before. You need to go do this, go to this, dress this way and look this way. You can't tell me Naomi wasn't involved in knowing how to orchestrate this deal.
So they were co-conspirators.
I think so. It doesn't say that. That's pure speculation. I don't like to teach speculation, but that's pure speculation. But I think that it smells like, no, I ain't going to say that. Whoops. Woo! Sometimes you got to catch it before you say it, and that don't always go. It smells like women were involved in it, doesn't it? You say I'm not going to do it, and then I do it. That's my age. No, this is a man deal here too. But I think they would have needed to discuss the nuances of the land, because Boaz would not have had a right to do it. But he also wasn't trying to necessarily just sell it. He was telling them they were going to sell it, but he takes the transaction. So I think somehow or in some way, this land was either about to be sold, it was already mortgaged, it was there, and I think that Boaz had to somehow assume deal-making rights for this. And they would have needed to discuss that before going. It just makes sense that way. I'm not saying they were going to connive about it, but they discussed the plan. Now, so all of that has taken place. He's got the guy saying, yeah, I'll buy the land. So now he comes in with this part. In verse 5, he says, then Boaz said, on the day you buy the land from Naomi, you also acquire Ruth the what? Moabite. He has always said, this is, whom Naomi brought back. He's not really emphasized this Moabite thing, but he certainly does here. Ruth the Moabite, the dead man's widow, in order to maintain the name of the dead with what? His property. The dead he's talking about is her husband Mahlon. Okay. At this, the guardian redeemer said, then I cannot redeem it because I might endanger my own estate. You redeem it yourself. I cannot do it. Now in earlier times in Israel, for the redemption and transfer of property to become final, one party took off his sandal and gave it to the other. This was the method of legalizing transactions in Israel. So the guardian redeemer said to Boaz, buy it yourself. And he removed his sandal. Then Boaz announced to the elders and all the people, today you are witnesses what I have bought from Naomi, all the property of Elimelech, Kilian and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabite, Mahlon's widow, as my wife in order to maintain the name of the dead with his property, so that his name will not disappear from among his family or from his hometown. Today you are witnesses. Now, in all of this, what you may find that it was a little bit of a broader, situation. Yes, he was saying earlier Naomi had some land, and that's true. And that land was probably in Mahlon's, purview because it would have been passed down. But you see here, Kilian mentioned as well. So I think Boaz is redeeming all of the land that would have been under Elimelech's purview before, because both of his sons had died on there. I don't know what that meant for Orpah, who went back to, the other wife. She wasn't involved. She should have come with that piece of land if there was something there. But Boaz is making a land deal here and trying to negotiate a land deal, but also, he throws in here about Ruth. Well, now this unnamed relative, he's like, wait a minute, baggage. It comes with a woman, You thought that may have, put a little icing on the cake for him. He said, hey, another wife or something. No, he knew better. One woman's enough for any man. And so he decided, he decided no. Now, what was his reasoning? Why would it endanger his estate? Janet said he couldn't afford it. You said it's because of her foreign status as a Moabite. His other wife may not have liked it. Yeah. If who is she? Who you say? If Ruth had a son. Yes. He may very well have gained inheritance to this man's land as well that he had if he didn't have a son. Okay? So that's probably the main thing. If this man did not have a male heir yet himself, and he fathered this child, not only would that child continue to have under levirate marriage, have their father's land, but he may have taken over his land too, which would technically, that would have been out of his family. That wouldn't have been the legal thing. So I think he was leery about his own land ownership of the stuff that he had at that particular time. So he goes, no. It also could have been, and I think, Jenna, did you mention about he didn't have the money? Is that what you said? Yeah, and it may very well have been, I don't know about that's the one theory, it may very well have been he had enough money to buy the land, but he did not have enough money to buy the entire estate that Naomi had and take on the wife and have other kids and all of that other stuff that would have been in that. But he says no, it would endanger his estate. He does not do it. These are really important pieces as we're going to go through this, looking at God's plan of redemption here in a minute, okay? He was willing to take his role from Leviticus 25, which is the land situation. Leviticus 25, and you can look it up in verses 25 to 28, talk about that if you have land and the person has died and it's mortgaged or sold, that person can come and redeem the land, pay off the mortgage and take it over, and that land stays within the family. So that's one separate law for land ownership. He was willing to do that. He was willing to go and be a party to that court case. But he was not willing to do the levirate marriage part and bring it over. And that's out of Deuteronomy chapter 25, mainly in verses 5 through 6. And again, we've already talked about why he refused. Now in verse 7, you had this weird deal with the sandal. Like, I need the cash. What you talking about? Hand me your shoe. Listen, I don't have any money, but hold my shoe right now. And that's going to tell you that I'm going to purchase this land. And it tells you in the parentheses there what was going on. Do y'all, huh? No. I put 2 smiley faces in these notes because I just had to, because I was laughing at the time that I was writing this, as I knew that I would be talking about it. Because remember, I introduced y'all to the whole passage of Deuteronomy 25, and we can look at verses 7 through 10. I didn't put it in your notes. But remember that as it's talking about levirate marriage, it talked about if the man refused, if the brother-in-law refused, the woman could take him to the city gate, to the elders. She could take off her sandal and slap him with the sandal. And it would be called the one who was unsandaled, So what's the deal with these sandals, as far as the transaction of business? I just think it's mighty comical today. I mean, that would be something that would be on like Saturday Night Live or something like that, slapping somebody upside the head. Remember George Bush, that guy in Iraq threw his shoe at him, I guess he was rather upset about the transaction, to throw shoes. That's the way it is in the Middle East. You do see throughout the Bible, and I put this in your notes, that clothing was a sign that finalized transactions legally, changed statuses of people. We've seen how Ruth had to change her clothes, and you can go throughout the scriptures and see that if you were really in mourning, sometimes you would wear sackcloth, you would tear your clothes, and all of that. So clothing was important. I can't give you all the history about this sandal situation, but the shoe stuff was, some people have tied it down to walking and holy ground and stuff. I'm just not sure about exactly why they did it that way with the sandals.
The person that get the sandal get to keep it?
Man, I don't know.
Was it one sandal or?
It's one. It's just one that I'm sure. It's like here. I don't know. I want to hold your wallet. I'm just telling you. If you buy something from me, and you want to go run to the bank, I just keep your license and your credit card and all that stuff. I'll hold that. Don't try to give me. Here's my sock. Hold that for me. You ever been back in the day when you was at a restaurant? It happened to me once. We went to the Waffle House in Gray, and I said, oh my goodness. Seriously, I do not have my wallet. And without a wallet, you couldn't go to no ATM or anything. And I told the people, and they said, well, she can stay here while you go up the road. I had to leave Brooke there as collateral, And I'm serious. I think in my truck I did have no, because I couldn't pay for it there. The bank was closed. I think I had to go into that bank or something. I don't remember. But I had to leave her up there. So they wouldn't take my shoe, or a sandal or nothing. So anyway, different times. But you seen that he gave him the sandal and everything was good. So really at this point with Boaz having the sandal in hand, I would have been holding it like that. I told you I'm not particularly fond of feet. I'm hoping he gives it back to him. But at that point, they didn't walk around with a bunch of, shekels, I guess, that many in their pocket. So you remember they're at court. The 10 elders are here. They've seen that symbolic gesture of the shoe being passed over. So now that is agreed to. And it's legally finalized between those two parties. But just like a bunch of other stuff, when two people agree to sell a house and all that stuff, you got to have the courts to process the titles and all the legal things that have to come with affirming that decision. So in verses 11 through 17, it uses that word then. Then the elders and all the people at the gate said, because he had challenged them, you're my witnesses. Y'all seen what happened, right? You seen that he agreed to it and gave me the sandal. That's what he was saying in verse 10. And they said, we are witnesses. And it says, may the Lord make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the family of Israel. May you have standing in Ephrathah and be famous in Bethlehem. Through the offspring the Lord gives you by this young woman, may your family be like that of Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Then the women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your family and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. So 2 kind of sections here, one about Ruth, one about Naomi. And you have the elders saying, yes, we're witnesses to the transaction. We affirm what has taken place. And it's very notable to me that we do not know the name of this kinsman redeemer, that this fellow. He was really wanting to protect his legacy, his land, his name, and all of that kind of stuff. But he's been forgotten. We don't know his name. And these people are saying, hey, we're hoping that you all are famous and with all of Bethlehem and all the land, and they certainly are. We're still talking about these people, and we know their names today. So should that guy have accepted it? Well, personally, maybe he should have, but it didn't seem like it was probably a part of God's plan. And the elders were talking about here, may the Lord make the woman who is coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, and then it mentions about Judah and Tamar. In Genesis 38, we looked at the life of Joseph as we were studying there. And in chapter 38, it's the story of Judah and Tamar. And that there again was a levirate marriage situation. They had twins. And one of them was named Perez. And that's a parallel between there is a parallel between Tamar and Ruth, because in both instances, God used both of those women to accomplish his will through levirate marriage. There's another situation you can go and study to see how this plays out. And as you look at this genealogy here, and you see the pedigree of where these folks are coming from, then you'll see how God has been protecting the sovereign line. Okay? The Messiah is going to come from this one line of the genealogy. So it couldn't be that this king redeemer was going to accept, because that line may have been the wrong way. It's like Adam and Eve had many sons and many children, but the Messiah comes through the line of which one of their sons? Seth. Yeah. Wasn't Cain. Okay? Huh? And yeah. So the Messianic line goes through Seth. It's like when you look at the priest, there are many Levites, but if you were going to be a priest, you had to be of the line of Aaron within the Levites. All right. So genealogies were extremely important. You see that God is protecting that sovereignly throughout this time. Now in verses 14 through 17, we see something going on here with Naomi, and it says in verse 14, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous." Who is he?
No. Ruth's son? Boaz.
Didn't change your answer. Read it. Read it. Read verses 14 through 17, and let's get a vote and tell me who it is. I will tell you this. It's Boaz or Obed. Either one. Who is it? I hear Boaz and Obed. I hear people saying, so some people are right and some people are wrong. If you think it's Boaz, tell me, Raise your hand, do something. Okay, you think it's Obed, raise your hand. Y'all are right. Okay, it is not Boaz. You may think it's Boaz, but at first when you read it, but look, it says, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer, may he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has what? Given him birth. Not provided him a child, has given him birth. Then Naomi took the child, and it's all of that pronoun matters. Talking about Boaz was not Naomi's guardian redeemer, but this boy was the guardian redeemer of her family because he was the future. He was the ultimate future for her. Boaz was technically Ruth's guardian redeemer, but if they did not produce a son, there was no redemption. There was no real redemption for the family. You had to produce a son that kept the name going. That was the whole intention. So this whole thing is about the baby. It's about Obed. Did somebody raise their hand? I thought somebody did. Now, when you look at verses 14 through 17, I think you see that Naomi's been restored. Remember back when we were looking in chapter 1, and where she was bitter, she changed her name at the end of the chapter from Naomi to Mara because she was in a bitter state because God had just poured out all of this stuff on her. Naomi, that name means sweetness. So that's why she changed it. She says, no, I'm not sweet, I'm bitter. Now you can see that she has this kind of sweetness coming back to her. And this is where I guess I took it out. I thought I put another smiley face right here after my parentheses, because I said grandchildren tend to have that effect on grandparents, don't they? Bring a little, because I know grandparents are a lot sweeter to grandkids than they are to the kids they had. You're like, what? Who are these people? Just breathe new life and you just let them get away with murder. You would have got backhanded. There is no such thing as backhanding a grandchild. So Naomi is just enthralled. She's sweet again. And it's about this baby. She's got her first grandchild here. So there's all of that kind of stuff. But it's way deeper than that. She's going to take this leading role. She kind of takes over. She takes over this kid. I think when you read the original language here, when it says that she took the child in her arms and cared for him, that word there is nursed, okay, him. I'm not saying that she nursed him at her breast. The point is she cared for him and kind of took over, and it was like grandma's got him, and she kind of protected this baby in a bubble. Ruth was still there, but she wanted to make sure this kid was going to be okay because there was hope again for the future with Naomi here, that the line was going to continue. And so let's look at in the end time we have here these parallels, and hopefully you'll see that this is not just a history lesson of what happened to Ruth. And I just put in your notes what I have from a PowerPoint, and you can't see that on the screen, Jay. You think? It's black. But it's in your notes. Boaz was a near relative, and he was a blood kinsman. And then he's the redeemer for them. But look, Jesus, by his incarnation, came near to humanity through his physical birth. Through his earthly Jewish mother, Mary, he became a blood relative to the Jewish people. And it gives you the scriptural citations here. And then Boaz was willing to pay the price to redeem or to buy back the property. Jesus was willing to pay the price of redemption. Boaz was able to redeem. He was a man of wealth and was able to cover the cost of redemption. Jesus was able to save. He had the power to save, and he called mighty God. It was called mighty God, mighty to save. So I put that in there quickly, but really I put it down to these three things. Look at what happened. You had to be a relative now. You had to be somebody that was a part of the family. You had to come and be a part of that for this person to be redeemed. And I forgot to mention in the notes here, when you go through redemption means that you go pay a price for something. There had to be a price paid. You don't get redemption for free. Okay? Nothing that's free is worth anything. Jesus, we talk about the free gift of salvation. We know that's not true.
That's right.
Salvation was absolutely not free, never was, ever free. Can you read in the Bible where it says that you had a free coupon for salvation? It is a gift. It's a gift. But you know of any gift that was necessarily free? Somebody had to buy it. Somebody had to make it. Everything that's out here in the world. He died in order for you to have this gift that, yes, in order for you to receive it, is free to you. But it wasn't free to him. It wasn't free to him. He had to pay a price to give you and I redemption. So, looking at this, you had to be a family member, and that was important. And Boaz was going through that process, and you had to go through the right steps to be. There was somebody standing. There was something standing in the way to be that to be a hurdle for Boaz to get to Ruth, right? And he had to go through that process, and Jesus had to come down in the form of a human being to be able to be that human sacrifice for you and I, to fulfill the law. Boaz was fulfilling the law. Jesus had to fulfill the law to be our Redeemer. So you had to be that particular person. And you have this one that's saying no. And it's just like with the Jews that rejected salvation. We only could get to Jesus because they said no. And then God allowed us to be grafted in to the family. You know, he just went down the line. He was always going to do it, but in this grand scheme of what he was looking to do, they were supposed to be the ones that reached out to us and spread the gospel to us. But because they said no, then we're grafted in, we're adopted in that way. You got to be a family member. And the second piece of it, you do have to have the means. You have to have the ability to be the one to redeem the person. You can't be broke. You can't have the power. You can't not have the strength and all the rest of that kind of stuff. Boaz had all of that. So did Jesus. But the last piece is, y'all, to me, the most important. You can be the member of the family, and you can have the power, and you can have the means. But what's the last thing that's the most important? I'll wait till I get the word I'm looking for. You have to be willing. Wow. There was a provision that the kinsman redeemer didn't have to do it. He could get slapped in the face with a sandal. Right? Jesus didn't have to do it. He didn't have to do it. But remember what Boaz told him? You're the only one that can do it. But I'm next in line. You know, well, that's one piece of this. It's not a parallel. Jesus was there. There's not a next in line. If Jesus had said no to this, we would be lost and undone. Yes, he has the power. Yes, he had the means and all of that. He's a part of the family and all of that. But he did not have to be willing. Remember that when he's there, that we depict in this mural here, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he sweated blood. What was he praying? He was saying, I really don't want to do this right this second. I don't know how it should. Lord, pass this cup from me. Take this away from me. And the reason why we put that part up there, because it's the most important piece of the verse. If he hadn't have said that last part, we'd be done. Because he was saying, no. No, I don't want to do this. He was agonizing, so much blood was coming out of his head. But then because of that remember? In John 3:16, he said, nevertheless, not what I will, but what you will. And he transferred his will and his determination that he had in his humanity, right, over to God. Now, let me ask you a question. This is about in the notes, but what was he saying? What was the cup? Why was Jesus agonizing? Why was his head so bloody? Was he just that nervous of crucifixion? Why was he so scared? Why did he not want to go through it? What was he scared? He wasn't scared, but what was he agonizing about? What did he not want to do? Yeah, you've been listening to me before, right? Had nothing. He wasn't scared of the cross. He wasn't scared of the Roman soldiers. He wasn't scared of all of the beatings and the stuff that they were going to give to him. He was not being a wimp up there about the fact that the Romans were going to crucify this body that he hadn't inhabited before. He's only been in it for 33 and a half years or so at this particular point. What he was agonizing over was exactly what you see when he hung on the cross. When he cried out, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? It was because for the first time in all of history, God felt separation from himself. Wow. Because of the sin of the past and the present and all the future was laid on his account at that point. And he felt a little separation like you and I do when we're in sin and we're in this world and we go, God, where are you? He had never felt like that before. He was God. He is God. And at that moment, he's going, God is saying, God, where are you? My God, why have you forsaken me? Isn't that what he's saying? Where are you? That's what he didn't want to feel. He didn't want to be separated. He didn't want to be separated from that Trinity. And he went through that. We focus on the broken body. We even eat the cracker because that's our main deal, and that's what he was talking about in Isaiah 53 and all of that. But the redemption, you could have had a broken body all day long, y'all. Anybody could have got it there and been crucified and died. But only the perfect lamb without spot or blemish, who willingly, when God was looking across, who can open up this seal? Only the Lamb could do it. So in redemption, I look at Boaz. He didn't have to do it, y'all. He didn't have to do it. This man, and earlier I wanted to put that out there because see, I'm being like Boaz. I'm setting you up for where I wanted to end here. Boaz was not being conniving when he was out there trying to do this deal. He knew that it was God's will for him to take care of this family. He had known it all that time. When he seen her out in that field, remember when he noticed her and he shouldn't have noticed her way back there? Boaz knew. And remember, I'm telling you, this man was sitting there all this time. You got to ask me. You got to ask me. And when he found her at the floor and she said, I'm Ruth, he's like, you have done something more kind than anything you've ever done before. What he said was finally, and he felt God's will just lining up. And he made his way as quick as he could get out of the meeting with Naomi and them. He made his way to that city gate. And he was talking to this guy. And he absolutely, the worst words that could have come out of that man's mouth was, yes, I'm going to do this. You know, because he was like, no, he knew. This was a man of God, I'm telling you this, okay? He wasn't the art of the deal Trump, I can tell you that now, okay? He was a man of God who was following God's plan, and he was just excited, not because he had an obligation. He didn't have an obligation. He was excited to do what he knew was right to redeem them. And Jesus, in the same way for us, and I give you the genealogy at the end, and you can look at that and study that out. But Jesus, for us, he didn't have to, but he did it. And he redeemed us, and he paid a price. That's the story that you can go, if you say, listen, I remember last night when Jim stood up here, for those of y'all that were here, and he said that Michael, when he goes out and he's evangelizing to people, that he doesn't use the New Testament. Remember that? Why would he have to? Why wouldn't he just turn to Ruth? He does. Why wouldn't he turn to Ruth and he talk about Boaz and talk about all of this that Jews know, and they know the story and they're listening to all of that, you know, and then you just say, hey, that Jesus fella, that was just a precursor of what really was going to happen. Michael, when he goes out to support missionaries, he only supports Jewish missionaries. with the money that he gives to them and how he supports. He doesn't support American missionaries to Jews. He doesn't support Chinese missionaries to Jews. And some people go, can't believe it. No, because you know what happens? When you go out there to an Orthodox Jew, this is what happened. And I'm going to tell you this while I'm on camera. They go out there and these folks come up and they were real zealous, and they were going to Orthodox Jews and a bunch of women that were out there. And Orthodox Jews, they don't even go to the military. They don't have to join the Israeli military like everybody else because they're protected as Orthodox Jews. They're the ones with the black hats and the black and white stuff with the curls coming down here. And they were out there in shirts that said, "Repent or burn in hell." And it was all of these women that were out there wearing these shirts, and they're trying to witness to these Orthodox Jews. How many Orthodox Jews says, "Oh my goodness, I read that shirt, and now for the first time I want to accept Jesus Christ as my Savior"? None. You know why? It wasn't just because of the shirt. That was the bad thing. But no Orthodox Jew is going to listen to a woman. People that don't know the culture, they don't know the belief system and all of that, they stumble and make tons of mistakes. He told me at lunch yesterday that another lady, and I don't know if she went out there with the intent to do it at this particular time, but this lady found herself on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. And she was witnessing to these Orthodox Jews, and she was talking to them about how they needed Jesus and they needed to be saved in a bikini. They wasn't going to listen to a woman clothed in a t-shirt. They sure not going to listen to a lady in a bikini. That's why he doesn't deal with people who do not know the culture and all of those things. And that's why, y'all, he uses the Old Testament. It's not a bad thing. You don't have to use the New Testament to talk to people about Jesus because Jesus is in here cover to cover. Cover to cover. And and I'm just telling you with this, if you want to talk to somebody about redemption, and maybe this is a person that is of Jewish faith, I can hardly tell you of a better place to take them, a shorter book, 4 chapters, take them to Ruth. And you can just see Jesus. Boaz was not Jesus, okay? But you could just see Jesus in every little thing. Look how God had orchestrated all of that for Boaz to be there at the right time, for them to be in that field. All of those things had to be perfectly placed. Ruth was always going to be in the lineage of the Messiah. And she was the one who didn't go back. When her mother-in-law said, "Go back to your God, go back over there to those people." God is always going to make sure we can never mess up his plan, y'all. He just turn around and go. He's still going to go. He's sovereign, all right? And you see that clearly throughout this book of every detail that was out there. God was orchestrating that. Give you some hope for the things in your life. And as I said, right now and what we're living in this world today, it's why I'm not scared. I know he's already written the end of the story. So why are we scared? Just rest in his sovereignty and be willing to do what he's called us to do in whatever time period that it's in. And who knows, you may be famous in your town where people know your name. You're not going to make it into the Bible. That's a done deal. Okay, but you may be known as somebody who follows the Lord. But what a wonderful story of redemption. Let's pray. Father God, I praise you and I thank you, Lord, for the reading of your word tonight. And Jesus, I just thank you for what you've done for us. I thank you for this story and how you took this foreigner and these women, Lord, that were just in this precarious circumstance, Lord, and you brought them to a place of utter redemption. We can learn about their stories. We can learn from each and every one of them and how Naomi was going through her circumstance and the things that Ruth did. And we can take all of those and take practical applications for our own faith journeys. But Lord, I think that we need to make sure we hone in on the true meaning of the entire book. Was the Lord to see how your sovereign will is orchestrating every day and has been for millennia and millennia for one purpose in this whole world, is to bring reconciliation for between you and for those that are believers in your Son Jesus Christ. Lord, everything you're doing for us, every blessing you give us, Lord, every great day of health that you're giving us, Lord, to be out and about is to be about your business, Father, to be closer to you, to put off sin, Lord, because you paid such a heavy price. And you've redeemed us, Lord, not so we'll go back into the debt of sin, but we'll live in a victorious life. And Lord, I pray that there's somebody in our families, there's somebody, Lord, in our spheres of influence, our workplaces, our neighborhoods, there's somebody that needs to know about your Son, Jesus Christ. And maybe, Lord, just maybe, you don't want us to use Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Those are great things to use, great tools to use. The New Testament's marvelous, takes them right to the point. But Lord, maybe we can use the book of Ruth. So, Father, I just pray that you would help us to understand that your entire word is the counsel that people need. And, Lord, they need to read the whole word, because we can find redemption from Genesis 1 to the very end of Revelation. Lord, go with us as we leave this place tonight. Keep everyone safe. Bless those that couldn't be here, Lord, and bless these that are here tonight, Lord, and keep them safe as they go home and minister, Lord, every day. Bring us back here on Sunday as we come to worship you in spirit and in truth. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.